Highly successful individuals are always focused on what's next, but they often don't take time to reflect on their journey and how far they've come. I'm Craig Heatherly, host of the Path Less Travel podcast, where we dive into the journeys of extraordinary leaders. Their success rarely follows a straight path, and that's what makes their story so remarkable. Now let's dive into this week's episode after a brief message from our sponsors. Looking for top talent in tech or professional fields? Avero Talent connects businesses with exceptional candidates, specializing in tailored recruiting solutions that match the right skills to your team's needs. Whether you're building a team or searching for a tough-to-fill position, Avero Talent delivers the expertise you need to hire smarter, faster, and with confidence. Let Avero Talent help you find your next star employee.
At Cressy Leadership, we don't just train leaders, we transform business and change lives. Employees learn to communicate around difficult challenges. Leaders build skills that create a thriving culture. Companies become healthier and more successful. We're Erin Cressy, Mickey Hay, and Anna McEachran, your expert partners, trainers, and coaches. Join the organizations already thriving with Cressy Leadership.
Welcome to the Path Less Travel podcast. This week, we feature Jacqueline Barton, the president and founder of Specialized Staffing. Jacqueline, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited for a conversation.
Yeah, me too.
You started this company back in 2001. What was the inspiration in doing so?
Yeah, so I love to say it was a master plan, but the reality of it is I moved here in 1990. And having spent 11 years at a regional staffing company, it was awesome. Learned a whole lot in that experience. And then that company decided to sell. And right, like in life, you have crossroads and you think about what are you going to do next. And I had an amazing opportunity to actually run a staffing company in Chicago, twice the size and even more money. And you have to remember this was right after 9/11, and I decided that it was time, right? I'm going to take this knowledge that I learned, this experience that I had gained from just being in business here for 11 years, and decided to open Specialized Staffing. I should share, though, at that moment, my husband had said to me, is it time to go home? Since this wasn't necessarily what he had considered home. But I felt it as home, right? And so I opened Specialized Staffing right after 9/11, and it's been an amazing journey for me to do it here in what I consider home, and in a field of work that I actually I found love in my work, right? And that's what you need to do is that. So really excited about just being in business and doing it here in my hometown is what I refer to as South Bend.
A big thank you to Senior One Care for sponsoring today's episode. Founded in 2006 by Carl and Kyle Bossing, this family-owned business has provided compassionate in-home care for nearly 2 decades. If my family needed a caregiver, I'd call Kyle. With 6 Indiana locations, they give you the peace of mind while your loved ones receive the care they deserve. Learn more at senior1care.com. Wow. What was that like? Jumping in the deep end of starting your own business and just the early stages, if you can recall.
So it was in my dining room table, right? The company sold. I didn't know all of that was happening, so I didn't have a job. And like everything, right, at moments in life, you really stop and you do assessments, but I looked internally, and then I looked to God, and I said, if this is what I'm supposed to do, then kind of help me make those decisions, and if not, then what should I do, right? And in every major crossroads in my life and every painful points of my life, I have found that when I've stopped and tried to listen, that I hear. And so what was it like? Like crazy, like everything that you're trying to do that's new, that you don't really know how to do. But it's like life has energy, and motion and you just keep moving forward. So for me, it was taking what I knew, but honestly, moving it forward every day. Just let's do this. And with our team, people who believed in what we were trying to do were there. And so, yeah, it's crazy. I would do it again, though. Definitely.
Well, women-owned, minority-owned business, 5 offices, 5 on-sites. You're in Michigan, you're in Indiana, you're in Kansas. You guys are unique. Beyond what I just mentioned there, what makes your company so unique?
It's first and foremost, we have 30 amazing staff. And I mentioned earlier, right, like you asked for guidance. And I think one of the things I wanted to do different was specialized staffing that I didn't have at my other company is that I was on the road every single day. I clocked 300,000 air miles a year, so that's a lot of plane rides. And I knew I wanted to dig deep. I knew I wanted it to be impactful. And honestly, that was the commitment that I made to my family, to God, that just said, if you guide me, I will make this different. I don't know how, but if you do, I will. And so what makes this unique is that our 30 employees have an opportunity to change lives. Like, there's honor in work, and we're in the business of putting people to work, right? Like, so the staffing industry is amazing in that, or if you're in HR, you have an opportunity to put people to work. But then to say, go and make disciples, right? Use our 30 staff members to truly impact the 5,000 to 6,000 employees we put to work and the 100,000 people we have in our database. That's the difference. It is when you look at work in a way of how do you, right, find love in the work that you do. I like to think that's the difference that we're making. I love to think that's the difference my staff feels that they're making, is they're impacting other people's lives every day.
You mentioned earlier that this is like home, and my goodness, it's hard to drive down the road or experience a whole day in this community without seeing specialized staffing somewhere, whether it's on a truck or sponsoring an event. Just seems like you guys are everywhere. What's next?
Yeah, so for me, it's not about how are we going to grow the top line or the bottom line. I think what's next always is how do we grow our people? How do we make sure that we're entrusted with lives of so many people? So how do we do more of that, right? Like more. And yes, that means growing the business. That means, right, growing the client base. It means all of that, but it's rooted in that if we can impact others, right? And we have a commitment, like all of our staff is, I say required, but I believe that they do it because it's the right thing, is they serve 40 hours a year in the community. We match every hour that they work with $25. So if you decide to make that 100 hours, that's $2,500. We will donate on behalf of your name to that agency that you have impacted, right? Not only with your time, but we want to put our money behind what we're saying. And so what's next? Yeah, I think in the markets that we're in, we can do more of that. I think we can ask our team to mobilize and impact more, not only by the work that they're doing with the employees that are coming in, but the work in the community, that they can be passionate, because those people go home and they have siblings and they have parents, and if there's a way that they're spreading that, right, the go and make becomes more tangible for me when I see them doing things in their community. So maybe it's the heart. Yes, there's revenue lines, there's bottom line, but it's first motivated that can we and will we do more, right? And how do we give back more financially, time-wise? All of that is honestly meaningful for me.
Yeah. Well, the title of the podcast is The Path Less Traveled. Mm-hmm. How does that connect to your leadership journey?
So I love to read. I love to learn. I will tell you one of the greatest mistake that I've made and continue to try and keep in the forefront, because I think a journey is understanding where your pitfalls are, right? And how do you avoid that? And so my leadership journey is, right, making sure that I realize that relationships are more important than transactions. In my early years, I was so focused on growing my career, growing my business, growing my checkbook, right? Making sure that I could, right, meet goals that I had personally in my life. And so my journey has been in that, in the process, how do I make sure I build relationships, right? It doesn't, they're actually synonymous, right? You can't really build a business if you don't build relationships with your clients, with your staff. So there's been some painful moments, right, where you realize that you didn't do that, and you were transactional, or you put profit over people. And so that's a constant journey, right? Like, you find yourself like, I wasn't proud of that. I did something that I can't really, I don't want to repeat that. And I can't really, it's hard to fix and mend relationships that you've damaged. And so how do I go into my journey? Because everything I do, right, what I do is people. My clients are people, my team are people, the people we put to work are people.
Right.
And so it's complicated, right? And the journey of building specialized staffing is about building people. And that's hard, not really easy to do, right? Building people it's complicated, but it's critical. I think is the word I want to use.
Well, you keep mentioning the word people, and I think that's where the companies that have the strongest culture that I've experienced focus on that. You get to work with a lot of companies. You own a company. What makes a company culture stand out amongst others?
I just think the energy that they bring, right? Like, we only have so much energy. And a company culture, I mean, I go and visit companies. I walk in and I feel the energy, whether it's positive or negative. When I leave that company, do I feel that I'm energized, or do I feel that to some extent, right, like it was tough in that environment? And so I think the company culture is, you're going to have really tough days, but words are not neutral, right? Like, how are we building people up? How are we building our community up, right? And so I think a company culture that says we have the ability to build, whether it's an equipment, but we can do that with a lot of positive energy, whatever that, right, is defined for other people. We know when we walk in and we feel energized. We know when we walked in and I feel like it's always take. And so the work we do is tough because we're dealing with people, and people are complicated, and it's hard out there for a lot of people. And that takes a lot of energy from our staff. So how do we make sure that we're giving energy back to our team so they can continue to do the work, right? And I think that's the culture. Is like, if you take an energy index and said,
right,
where are we in the energy index? And then you know that when it's not high, how do you make sure you restore that? Because it's a restoration, it's a process, right? Like you have to do that, and you have to stop long enough to know you need to do that.
Well, what's some advice that you would like to have received back in 2001, or just a young leader that you'd be open to sharing for younger leaders, newer leaders, or just seasoned leaders? Yeah.
So I always think about like what I would share with Tommy, and the thing I always say is that relationship matters. I'll tell you it through a story real quick, but I had one of my staff come in and tell me that there was a client in particular that wouldn't work with us, specifically because they had a bad experience personally with me. And I was in angst about just that comment, not because the client wouldn't do business with us, but because I hurt and I ruined a relationship. And I stopped and I thought about it, and I thought of myself, because this had happened 20 years earlier, and said, yes, I did that. And so what advice is that relationships matter? It might be, right, someone that it's at the grocery store, but it does. And how you behave and what's most important to you shows up. And so in that moment, if what's showing up is someone that's, right, it's all about them, that person's going to receive it. And so how do you show up and then think 20 years from now, when you have wronged someone, how do you go back and fix that? And I can tell you that I was not at all concerned about the business, but I was concerned that I had hurt someone. And I went back and I made amends. And I just said, if nothing else, I need to apologize. This person now has become a friend.
Wow.
And so I feel like what I would say to myself 20 years ago is, it really matters. It really matters even if you don't come in contact with that person again, because it stays with them. And if you want to live a meaningful and purposeful life, the people that you have in contact with, how do you impact them, right? So that would be the advice I would have given to myself, because I'm sure there are other people out there that I've wounded, right? In my inexperience, in my lack of focus, in my lack of having faith, right? In really knowing who I was and the core of what matters. There's some people that I've hurt and would like to figure out how to make sure I make amends there.
So you talk about showing up, and as a leader, you've got to be your best all the time. At least strive to do that. What are some things that you do to show up in your best self, your best way, whether it be, you mentioned books earlier. What are some things that you're doing to constantly become the best version of yourself?
Yeah, so it's looking at life holistically. First, I wake up early and I prepare for the day. That's a habit. I also think about what I'm putting in my body, things I'm listening to, things I'm eating. And then really knowing that I also need to be energized and I need someone to pour into me. And so whether it's a podcast, honestly, it's my family, right? Like, I get so much from them, but also finding those moments, taking a trip that you're really totally disconnected and that you're being with the people that you're supposed to be there for and with, and then just taking in life. I think that for me, I always have that trip in my head that I'm planning for. That helps me not only prepare for that trip, but also helps me to know that we need moments of rest and silence and stop, because the world is very full of things and agendas. So for me, it's finding it from lots of different sources. Friends, they bring energy. And so finding that, because I need it quite often. I will tell you, I need it every day.
Well, there's a question further on, I don't know if we'll get to it, but it talks about what would be your billboard message? What word did you put out there? And the question that I have for you here is, what message has somebody delivered to you or instilled in you, or advice they've given to you that has impacted you to where you're at, to get to where you're at today?
So you hear lots of things, right, that's there. And I don't think it's a message more than an action, because I think that experiences matter, and the actions that from someone that we experience leaves us either breathless or takes the wind out of us. So I think it's a combination of both. I know when I've had someone take the wind out of my sail, and I'm like, okay, don't do that. And then really I want to say, like, the message from my family. I've been married to my husband for 29 years, and that thing that love is patient, love is kind. I mean, he lives it. And I think the action of just being loyal and being committed and being so kind So it's not really maybe something I've heard, but it's something I've experienced. It's something I've seen. It's the way I love to start my day with my husband. It's the way I end my day. And it resets me, right, to say, right, you've been through, this guy's been with you. So that action raises me to a level like, how do I become more like my husband? He's been a gift that has been given to me. So I don't know that it's a word. If I had to tell someone a word, there's a lot of things in my head, but I would say it's been an action that I get to experience for as long as God will allow me the time with my husband. And I think it's a feeling. It's something that's so rooted that just gives me this feeling I can go conquer the word. Right, I can go conquer whatever's coming at me, and when I don't, I get home, that's okay. Someone's there, and that's a beautiful thing. It starts and ends my day.
So you mentioned your husband. Who are some other individuals, mentors, anybody in the community or really across the world that has helped shape and mold who you are today?
Yeah.
And what was that impact like?
So I would say, honestly, it's the people that I don't even know all their names, but it's our employees. They come in, they interview you, they tell you about their life, they tell you about their struggles and their journey, and it's enough. I've had to excuse myself because I just have to go cry, right? Because how can one person experience so much and yet sit in front of me with the attitude that they have? Like, I'm in a line of work that I get to meet with employees every day. So I'm in the line of work that I get to see a lot of superheroes. So I have lots of friends, I have lots of mentors, I have lots of people I will call. But the people that resonate the most with me are my employees that come in, that tell us their story, that make you realize, like, right, there's these unsung superheroes out there that I can't wait to put them to work so that they can tell their story, and that we're part of that journey of helping them get out of maybe where they're stuck. So there's just that, right? The one story that I keep crying about every time I think about it is the one girl from Indy that put her daughter in the car because she was in an abusive relationship with just the clothes in her back, and she shows up the very next day to apply for work, and I'm being judgmental because she looked like she just woke up, and she teaches me a story and teaches me life, right? That's my young and early age of not knowing, and like, I'm gonna do what's right, I'm gonna do what's necessary, I'm gonna do what's hard. And seeing people do that and then come out on the other side of it, wounded but moving, right? Momentum. That's the story, and I'm fortunate enough. I'm in a business that I see it often. That's why I have found the love in the work that I do, because just people are amazing. So yeah, there's many.
Yeah.
And it happens to be a lot of my associates that I get to see their lives and where they're going and what they're doing. It's amazing.
Well, I think most people are one or two steps away from a breakthrough in life, and some don't get there. And I'm sure you've had many breakthrough moments in your past, and you don't quit. What drives you?
Because the purpose has to be bigger than me. So what's that purpose? So I tell people, like, early on in my career, my purpose was, I was 25 years old. My father had passed. I have 7 other siblings. My mother had not worked in her life, really. And all of a sudden, right, I'm 25 with a household of, really, with my mother, 9, right? So what do, right? So the purpose is bigger than me. And I was up at 5. I probably didn't get home until 10. Would that have been different had not that happened? Absolutely. Because the purpose of wanting to make sure every single member of my family was taken care of. That's where, right, you seek God, but at that point it was just necessity. It was like, I'm going to do whatever's necessary. And so in that drive to make sure that my family, the most important people in my life, are taken care of, that's why I sit here today. I love to say that again, that it was a plan, but that's what woke me up. And I think I got to see some things about myself and my capacity, that we all have an untapped capacity. It's just at what point are you put to experience it? And I was able to experience it, right, in a way that has added now a little more to my life, because I knew what I'm capable of doing, which is also when I fail, I am hard on myself, because I'm like, you can do better and let's move forward. So the purpose has to be bigger than yourself. It just has to be, in order for you to, this is the world. It can be a grind. And if you don't have a purpose, you will lose sight of why and how to do things. And I think there's so many books about it, but it's got to be your purpose. I don't know for everyone what theirs is, but you know it when you have it, and it drives you, and it nags at you, and it motivates you, and it makes you cry, and it also makes you celebrate, right? Because then it tells you life is actually beautiful.
So the daily grind, the pressures of starting a business, the pressures of employees depending upon you, the successes along the way, what are you most proud of?
I'm proud. I don't know that proud would be the word. What am I most joyful of? Like I'm finding joy that my team serves. I find joy that I find myself, although I don't need to take care of my 7 siblings, I find joy, right? I find joy in serving others. So I think that for me, it's that, right? When the grind is real. I go home and I'm exhausted because I wake up really early. There's meetings after meetings, but I'm most proud of the fact that when I go home at the end of the day, I can find joy in something, joy. And I think that's what I'm most proud of, is that I can look at life even when it's difficult and try and find something that is absolutely amazing about it. And you just have to look. And I think that's because at 25, I felt the worst thing had happened to me. So everything from there, that's actually pretty good, right? 25, taking care of household, right? That's a lot of pressure. So everything else, honestly, I don't want to say that it's easy, because it's still hard, but there's joy. There's joy, and I feel like I can find joy in something if I just stop and look.
Well, we're going to shift away from some of the hard questions for you as we start to wrap up this interview. I've got a couple kind of fun quick-hitting questions for you. You just talked about being exhausted sometimes coming home, or maybe most times coming home from the office. What are some things that you do to recharge that you've adopted, that you share with others?
Yeah.
What's the secret?
So the thing is, I tell people, everyone in my company has to set a goal or their goals. And for me, left to my own device, I won't, right? Like, there's reasons not to do something. So having goals are really important, and having goals with friends, and having things you're going to do that you're committed to doing with others. Mm-hmm. That really keeps your goal, right? So for me, last year, I hiked the Dolomites. And the beginning of the last year, I worked out. I did what I needed to do, right? I showed up, because I wasn't going to show up in September with my friends and not climb the Dolomites. So what do? So this year we're going to Switzerland, and we're climbing something even harder.
Oh, wow.
Because I need that. I need to be pulled out of the grind. I need something that says, You can't just show up and think you're going to do well. You have to work at it. And because health is really important to, right, life, that means between now and September when we go, I have to be in shape, because going up 4,000 feet in elevation,
I love that,
doesn't happen if you don't train for it. So I need to think always ahead, and I have goals that are things like that honestly, it's beautiful. It's with my friends, it's healthy, if you've never been to the Dolomites and you don't believe in God, when you stand on top of that mountain and you look across and you see, you will, because it's beautiful, it's peaceful, it's quiet. You actually can hear your soul. You can hear God because you can see the beauty. And so that has been, for me, fun.
That's
right?
great.
I'm excited because I want to finish. I want to do well, but I want to have that moment of pause when it matters, right? To be present with my husband, with my friends, honestly, with just nature, with God. That's what gets me going. And setting that January 1st, that trip is in September, keeps me, right? That even when I'm tired, I got to get up, I got to go do this because I have to show up. But I think that's the same with asking your team to set goals. It helps them help their journey and their path, right? And remove some of the noise that can happen in the grind of work. And like, these are things you have to focus on. So I'm excited. I love that part of it.
I love that. I'm happy to ask that question. You mentioned books earlier. What are some of your favorite books that you'd recommend to leaders?
So I'm reading one that my client is reading because they're hoping to impact their leadership team. So it's the Effective Manager book, right? And it's all about connecting with people. So I don't know that I have favorite books. What I do is pick up where clients are at and review them. And again, I try to do podcasts, but I love like Marcus Buckingham and just their podcasts and the things that they do. So I just think it's like constantly learning. GCC they do the Global Leadership Summit. And so throughout the year, obviously review the information, but throughout the year I'll pick something and I'll go back on something. So I think it's just realizing like every week I need it, right? Like that's the energy. I need something to pour into me because I'm spent. I don't have anything to give. And if someone doesn't pour something into me, so I think for everyone, it's like making sure you're in a cadence of how is something being poured into you, because you can't generate the energy alone. If you're negative and you're low in energy, you need right? Like it doesn't work that way. That's not how energy works. Something has to come in and change that chemistry and make it, right? So for me, it's what is out there. People will recommend things, a book or something, and I gravitate towards, okay, what can I read? But always making sure there's something every week for me that I can have a recharge that's going to reset. And we need a lot of resets. Some days I need it. Some weeks I need it every day because it's a tough week. And I find myself, whether it's the Bible or, right, some podcast or going back on a book that I've already read, but there's pieces that I highlight that I might just pull a paragraph out of it. Sometimes that's all it takes is something else pouring into you.
My last question for you, and I'll get your final thoughts on just leadership in general. What's one of the kindest things someone's done for you? It could be you, your family, your business.
Yeah. So for me, like mine is the gift of service. Like gifts don't do that because busy people don't have a lot of time. So there's kind things people do. They go out to lunch and they pick up lunch for me. That's really kind because you're taking time to offer service to others. So there's a lot of kind things. The kindest thing I know every day happens. My husband loves to load the dishwasher.
Keep doing it, man.
Keep doing the dishwasher, because that gift of service, right? The gift of doing something that you don't have to do, that's kindness, right? Like, and so what can you do for someone? There's so many kind people out there that do things. A text someone sent you that just says, I'm thinking of you. So I wish it were one thing. Actually, I don't, because that's the point, is that kindness is so valuable. Like, when you do it and give it to someone, it's really what, that drink that someone goes, fills up your water bottle and brings it to you because they know you've been sitting there for 2 hours. That's amazing kindness, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the little things for me.
Great answer. I love it. Well, what final thoughts do you have about leadership that you'd want to end the podcast with? The floor is yours, or anything about your business.
Yeah, no, you know what? I have this thing in my tablet that I have, and it's like, love is the most powerful force in ... Whatever you want to fill in. Love is the most powerful force in life, in business, in friendship,
I like that.
in sport. I heard it, right? I heard it in some seminar that I was at, and I'm like, it was one of those, like, I got to pull over, I got to write this, right? Because love is the most powerful force. If you love the sport, if you love the work, if you love your family, right? Like, that force, for me, at 25, that force was the most powerful thing, that love, to make me do well in business. So I feel like that's the thing, and I'll have to remember who said that, because I wrote it down, and it's in my booklet, and I start my day like, it's, how do I love, like, find the love in the work you do. Okay, this is crazy, I'm doing a proposal. All right, what do I need to do? But I think I would leave people with that, and it's not mine originally, but has stuck with me. Like, love is the most powerful force. And just whatever, that would be my billboard, ... You fill in the ... And love cures so many things.
So thank you so much for doing this.
My
This was
pleasure.
great. Well, that's it for this week's episode of the Pathless Travel Podcast with the president and founder of Specialized Staffing, Jacqueline Barton.